Well, the results are not evil or divisive, I would say. So the people that haven't seen it, 5 weeks, which is good work for 5 weeks. 300,000 or over 300,000 submissions, 80 hours of oral submissions from 529 people, which I'm assuming some of those were representing groups, which ended in a 45-page report with 12 themes raised by opponents and 4 themes by supporters, which kind of speaks to that narrative of, I think Chewie was saying it last night, of the opponent side had a lot to say, and it was almost based around facts and a lot of evidence. It was very academic, and then the supporter side was very vibes, I think is what he said.
Yeah,
and you can see that here with the difference between those two, I guess, two lists, really.
Yeah, is that the Radio New Zealand article there?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's a good one, actually. So if people want a kind of quick skim of what the report says, it's actually not a bad place to start.
No, it's great. Do you have anything to say on the themes? Because they're sort of what most of us would expect, but is there anything that was quite surprising for you to come out of this?
Well, not after all those submissions, right? Nothing surprises me anymore. There was some differing. I think what was interesting, the National Party didn't have much to say. They just want this to go away, and so it's not surprising they didn't have a real view. The Māori Party view is what you'd expect. They take the view that Māori are sovereign and that they're not. The treaty essentially is retained their own sovereignty, and that this is therefore an attack on sovereign rights. It's a view which is at odds with kind of real world New Zealand, if you know what I mean, because anyone who's living in New Zealand is subject to the New Zealand government. So whilst I think the argument that goes backwards and forwards about whether any particular iwi ceded sovereignty in the treaty is a real argument, that's not the only way governments get sovereignty, right? Over the course of years in government, and it kind of can accumulate. So that's interesting that they're actually putting on paper their view, which is that Māori have some sort of sovereignty which is quite separate from kind of the New Zealand government. And so there you go. That's what you get with the Māori Party. The Greens and the Labour Party views were relatively similar in many ways. I really wanted to make sure that the Labour Party put down a really thoughtful view which captured some of the fantastic submissions that were made. And one of the things I really wanted to do was not to kind of duck and weave, but to confront head on the kind of equality argument, the argument that Māori get special privileges because they make these claims under the treaty, and they're more privileged than Pākehā or non-Māori New Zealanders. And I think it was really important to do that. And I guess there's a few ways there's a whole lot of reasons that you can kind of pan out, and it might be worth just touching on some of them. And probably the first one is there's actually no real evidence. Just one. I think it was a farmer came along and said, under the Resource Management Act, Māori can stop everything. And so then we had local bodies, and so we'd ask them, okay, what is the rights that Māori have under the Resource Management Act that no one else has? And they were pretty upfront and said, well, nothing. They get to be consulted just like everyone else does, but they've got no special veto right or anything. But sure, they're taking into consideration, and their cultural rights, in the local environment are taken into account, but they get some special rights. So the first thing is, well, it doesn't actually work that way. And I guess the second point was this, that because a lot of people are like, well, what about whānau ora or the Māori Health Authority, things like that. And it's true that they deliver services in a particular way. But one of the really interesting things about those kinds of services is that it's about the way the services are delivered, not actually who they're delivered to. So, I went and I was at a Pride event the other day, and I got a Hep C test, right? Now that was delivered in a very rainbow-friendly environment. It was as gay as you can get, right? But I was a straight white guy, and I was more than welcome to use that rainbow-friendly service. Now, if we think about Māori services in that way as well, they're Māori-friendly so that they deliver services more effectively to Māori. They're not exclusively for Māori. And I guess that brings me to the third point about kind of the equal rights thing. If you say that services should be provided in, only in English, or only in a model which is familiar to kind of our Western heritage, then all you're doing is you're saying we're a monocultural society. It's not preferring someone else to recognize that they have a different cultural tradition which can be respected with tikanga, te ao Māori, and so on. So difference is not inequality, and that's fundamentally the flaw of the ACT Party's argument, that they say they're treated differently, or they can be treated differently, therefore that is inequality. That's actually just a flawed argument, because difference and inequality are two quite different things.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go. Slight rant, but I'm doing a bit of a sales job, but I really think it's worth a read if you're really interested in this stuff. If you've got a passion for the treaty, that document, the Select Committee report, is actually of significance in terms of recording not only what happened, but where we are right now in terms of the treaty. And so, I'd encourage people to go and have a look.
I'm just going to put the link into the chat there. I think that's, before Magenta, you jump in, I think that's what I got out of the oral submissions, and I'm kind of glad that it got vetoed, that the oral submissions did go through, because I think there's a lot that came out of that because it's audio video, right? It's much easier for people to consume, and I think there was so much that came out of that was good to consume for a lot of us. It was easy access, and I think I actually learned a lot from those submissions. So part of me is like, I know it would have killed the bill sooner if we didn't do it, but I also recognize it actually was a great thing to do.
Oh, no, I kind of agree with you as well, right? The way it turned out, the world we ended up with was one where there were a whole lot of fantastic submissions, and that's certainly a good thing.
Yeah. Magenta, have you got anything to ask?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I agree with most of what you said in the second and third point, but that first point about Te Pāti Māori, to be honest, I'm going to push back a bit on this, and you kind of framed it as if they want that tino rangatiratanga is the equivalent of having separated, governing things, but it's more to do with the fact that constitutionally we have never been set up in a way that has actually been how it was supposed to be from the beginning. So that's what they tend to kind of push. So I feel like it's a little unfair to frame it in the way that you've done.
No, look, I wasn't trying to frame, so really good conversation to have, right? I wasn't trying to frame what we understand by tino rangatiratanga, because I certainly have an understanding of how that has developed through the principles of the treaty, right? As giving as much autonomy and self-governance as is appropriate and possible to Māori, particularly in respect of things that are Māori, right? So I think we can agree on that. But my point, I guess, was the approach, and I'm trying to find it in the document itself, because as I read the Te Pāti Māori submission or the report, they actually essentially assert that they have more than simply that kind of tino rangatiratanga. And I mean, if you look at the way they, and there's other things going on as well. If you look at the way they approach Parliament, they sort of sit both within it and outside of it. So if I can divert for a moment, if you look to the way that they are managing this privileges issue that's going on at the moment, they're saying, well, we don't really even recognise the authority of this Parliament to constrain our behaviour. We're not going to turn up to the committee. Now, I'm on that committee, so I can't talk too much about it. We're not going to turn up to the committee. We're going to have our own separate committee. So that kind of approach, saying we don't sit within it, we sit outside of it.
But there could be an argument to be made that they're kind of forced to do these things because in terms of our political framework, we're entirely a Westminster system that pretends to honor the treaty. So I think what a lot of that really speaks to is more the fact that from the beginning, we have never been set up in a political system that is co-governed, because had we had that, like you said, those submissions that had a lot of talking about whakapapa and how like people's mana is enhanced by the treaty, those type of things would be captured if we had a political system that had included Māori tikanga from the start. And so I guess it just feels like a lot of times, while I don't actually even agree with everything Te Pāti Māori says or how they do it, I think that they are often pushed to it because we're getting close to 200 years on and we're still having the same conversations, but I don't think they're the conversations we should be having.
Yeah, I mean, I really was just trying to capture, because you asked me what the report was, and I just want to try and capture the flavour of Te Pāti Māori's view, and I think we've actually done that. I think this discussion we're having is actually.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't reduced or diminished in the kind of. I think the words that you used initially were a bit too reductive.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's always hard, isn't it, when you're kind of trying to capture it in a short frame.
No, I understand.
But the other thing to know, I think you make a really good point about Parliament being a Westminster Parliament, right? And whilst it's changed slightly, fundamentally it is very much based on the Westminster system. So it doesn't, and even things like really strict rules about speaking and what you can say and how long you can speak for and things like that. It's quite different from what might go on a marae or elsewhere. There's actually some work being done, and Adrian Rurafi, who used to be Speaker, he's actually leading it to say, well, what do we need to do to recognise the place of tikanga in Parliament? I think it's a really hard job that he's got ahead of him, but it's good to see that some progress, is being made in that place in particular, because you do know it's kind of a foreign place. I'm a lawyer. I turned up and I thought it was weird. For someone like Hana, who's young and very Māori, it's truly weird. So I get it. Yeah, we do need to do better.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the thing is that I feel like the question shouldn't even be about these principles. It's maybe more the way that we're set up, because I mean, there's Hana and them shouldn't even have to really go before this committee if we had set our system up to accommodate for the actual cultures that we were blending together. We could have, and I know there's been Mātiki Mai and He Puapua, which have done a lot of great work, like iwi have been doing work on this. It's just frustrating to see that those aren't the conversations that are elevated. It's bloody DS's stuff that just gets the conversation all the year.